Round 5 of Pacers Bucks tonight. Pacers have already won the season series, but this has become quite the intense series. Is this a rivalry? What will it take for the Pacers to win again? Can the Bucks overcome it? Ti Windisch of the Gyro Step podcast will break it all down today here on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, y'all, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're talking Pacers Bucks again because the two teams play again after playing Monday. Their fifth game since mid-November, including the in-season tournament. This has become quite the series. All intense games, some high-scoring nights, some drama-filled moments, some technical fouls, clearly some added physicality and intensity to these games. But is it a rivalry? That's something we'll discuss today, along with the series in general, the X's and O's, the machinations that have made these games so fascinating and so far in the Pacers' favor. They've already clinched the season series, and who better to do that with than someone who covers the Bucks, Ti Windisch from the Gyro Step podcast, one of my favorite people covering this Bucks team. We get into all of it, the rivalry aspect of it, if it even is one. We get to the bottom of that, all the X's and O's you can want to know. It's all coming today on Locked On Pacers. Let's just get right to it. To rivalry or not to rivalry? That is the question among many we will be talking about today. Bucks Pacers round 5 in less than 2 months. It's about time we get a Bucks person on to talk about what this season has been. He's Ti Windisch with the Gyro Step, one of the best places to hear about the Milwaukee Bucks on a day-to-day basis. Ti, I made fun of the Bucks earlier this season. They were like 13-4, and I had watched the Bucks like 6 times, and I think they'd impressed me like twice. And then they started playing really good, and they've been awesome since. But they still are 1-3 against the Pacers. It's been a very interesting Bucks season.
It has been. We've seen the highs and the lows already to a certain extent. As you note, the lows for Milwaukee are like, oh, they're only 4th in the conference with a top 10 net rating. This is horrible. And some Bucks fans and many analysts certainly were, really freaking out and concerned about that. I think we'd all over here in Milwaukee kind of hope that it would be like a 30-0 start because, hey, Dame's here now and there'd be nothing to figure out. And there's been quite a bit to figure out. And, of course, a lot of discourse about the job Adrian Griffin is doing and all this stuff. But I will say I think it's without a doubt one of the best storylines for the Bucks and maybe the NBA, probably more the Bucks and Pacers because no one outside of the Midwest cares about the Midwest. But the budding Bucks-Pacers rivalry that took a leap forward in the in-season tournament. And then, of course, Game Ball Gate. I didn't think there would be even as much energy as there was in Monday's game on New Year's Day. I figured the time difference, so much else going on, Christmas, things would simmer down a little. It wasn't out of hand, but of course, a little shenanigan at the end, and Isaiah Jackson and Bobby Portis, TJ McConnell and Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis not getting thrown out of that game is a huge upset based on how many times Pacers tried to make that happen, clearly. That's a long answer, but yeah, it's been an interesting Bucks season, and the Pacers have added a lot of spice to it.
Yeah, I watched the Bucks play the Mavs once, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, that was one of their
a good one.
10 games, 12 games. I was like, okay, like if the Bucks are going to be awesome, they're going to look like this. And then the next time I watched them, they played the Knicks, and they very much weren't. But then they've been really good for a while, except for playing the Pacers for some reason. All right, we'll talk about this first, right? So I talked to some people on the Pacers about this. So the word rivalry, right? That's a big word, right? The last time the Pacers had a rivalry, to me, I'm sure some listeners can disagree or even go farther back than me. For me, I would say is the Heat, the Heat teams that they played in the conference finals twice. The reason I bring that up is not to say that like it's been a while since they had a rivalry. It's because that formed because of postseason battles. And so when you ask Tyrese Halliburton about the word rivalry, he's like, they have won a championship and been deep in the playoffs a lot, and we have never been there. So his opinion is no, right? Some other Pacers players are like, yeah, maybe. Like, there's a lot that's happened here. So the difference between the playoffs and just regular season games is they played in the in-season tournament. I don't know where you sit on the importance of that. So if you're just team playoffs make rivalries argument, which I am receptive to, I think that can be the case, like Rockets Warriors, for example. Yeah, I think that's fair, right? But if your storylines or moments or intensity or physicality make rivalries, yeah, we're there. Game ball gate, the Dame celebration from Tyrese, 2 or 3 technical fouls in every game. They've played 5 times, and what's this going to be, like 50 days or something? Like,
Yeah, it was the first one was what, like late November?
Yeah.
It's not been long. That feels like years ago now.
Right, right. Yeah, that one, Giannis had 50 whatever, and that was like the least intense game of all of them, right? It was a 2-point game. So they've all just had something in it, whether it's Giannis going crazy, right? Or a celebration or a game ball or a handshake or a million technical fouls. So I don't know how you get your basis for a rivalry, or if you want to use that word or not. I think I want a new word, right? Because it's more than it's not a regular season game. You could tell by the way it's played. But I agree with Tyrese to a point that like a playoff series does like set it, if that makes any sense. If they meet in the postseason this year, oh yeah, we're there. So
Yeah,
I don't know where
100%.
you stand, but I think we're like on the precipice.
I think it's a rivalry. I'm not one of these like air of superiority Bucks fans who have adopted it because they don't want to look at the reality of the situation with Bucks Pacers this year. Well, listen. I mean, I get that definition. I think there can just be degrees to rivalries. Like the best one we've had in decades is for sure Cavs Warriors. It's going to be really hard to match.
Yeah.
It's weird for teams to meet that often, but I think we can't go in the NBA putting up our noses to potential rivalries because we don't get that many. I mean, you just said for the Pacers, it's been what 10 years now. I mean, and they've been good throughout that time. It's not like we're talking about a franchise that's they win 20 games a year. They don't have any rivals. Like no, it made playoff runs. They've gone to the playoffs, have some great players on the team. So I think we should just embrace it. These teams don't like each other, and they get up for playing each other, which, as watching most of the Bucks games, not always the case. I can tell you, even against some pretty good teams, they want these games, and they haven't maybe said it directly as much. And a playoff series would make it to a whole new level. I think the in-season tournament, while not playoffs, clearly most of the teams involved really did want it, and it was more intense. Yep. I think that, like I said, like just accelerated what this was. I don't think, even if the game was like as chippy when they met, it's not the same just because the level of eyeballs on it too. I mean, it was a real true national game, which I know Tyrese had talked about, had not had any of those before this season, really. Sorry, NBA TV executives, as you're tuned in. But, the big TNT and ABC ones or ESPN, wherever. So I think it's a rivalry. I think we'll see. It's going to be almost a little tough if, obviously they play again. I think it's going to be a good competitive, probably heated game in Indiana. But then, of course, they don't play again for the rest of the season. And if there is no playoff matchup, then maybe it cools down a lot. You never know how teams could change before the next meeting, everything else. You assume, at least Giannis and Dame and Tyrese would all still be there and there'd be something. But you never know what the teams will look like next time out. It could all change by next year. I think right here, right now, heading into their 5th game in 2 months or 3 months or whatever, it is a rivalry, though. And I hope we get another great game. I hope everyone plays out the whole thing through the end and doesn't get ejected. I'd like to see the full game, not the abridged version where Thanasis has to play or something. But yeah, I think it's a rivalry.
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, something fun that adds to it is Ty is from Wisconsin, right? Ty Halliburton. Oh, funnily enough.
Me too.
But Ti Windisch, also an Oshkosh native. So that helps.
I don't know if I'm like lower than second on most famous ties associated with Oshkosh, but I'm for sure not first. I know that.
There you go. So that's why I mentioned the playoff thing. Like then it for sure becomes one because let's pretend they don't mean the playoffs. Like there's a chance, depending on how the schedule shakes out, that like they play tonight and then they don't play until 2025, right? Like that would suck.
Yeah.
But it's not like impossible, right? So they if it's gonna cement itself as like something everybody looks forward to even next season, a series would do it. And I think right now they're 2-7. I mean it's
they've been
over,
close for too long. I kept hoping the Pacers would win more because I think they kind of low-key exhaust the Bucks, who are old, and they keep lining up too good, which is a little concerning, to be honest.
So I almost would equate it to like these teams have met in the postseason. I was gonna say Sixers Celtics, but that feels bigger. I mean
because that's more historic too.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Bucks Pacers, like I think they have met up like once back in the day, but it's not like clearly going into this season, neither of these franchises, outside of just being in the same division, I don't think would have called out each other as a top like 3 to 5 rival. And it really
That's a good
is.
point.
You mentioned postseasons. It's like the Sixers I think are a unique case because their fan base is the worst. But there's Celtics, Raptors, Heat, and then kind of Suns. When I was asked to name like Bucks rivals, it's the teams they played in the playoffs. Those are the
Right.
ones that just come to mind first. And then again, Sixers. Now Pacers would be on that list. I think Suns is kind of, I think it would be a great series because KD's there now. They have the KD thing. But like the Nets, obviously that was a big series, but teams deteriorate now so fast that it doesn't really matter anymore. It's a whole new team. So I think things are very fluid now, which is why I'm more willing to latch on to this as a real rivalry.
I like your stance. Maybe I'll adopt
Yeah.
your stance. Pels Grizz. I think that's the best I can do. The Jaw Zion stuff, that I think is as close as I can get. And those two teams, it's still like a thing, especially when both those guys play.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, I have to really quickly talk to you about the lovely people over at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. Huge game for the Colts this weekend. There's still time to get in on the action for the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers on FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets. Whew, that's a lot. Guaranteed. All you got to do is place a $5 bet to get that. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com/lockdown. You make your first bet there. Win or lose that $5 bet, $150 in bonus bets. The app on FanDuel is super easy to use. There are several different ways you can use it to bet, like finding bets in their new Explore tab. You can do live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay in their Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and plenty more over on FanDuel. So again, that's FanDuel.com/lockdown to make your first bet a layup on FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. The other part of this is they're in the same division. And if I can add on stuff, prior to this season, Ty, I said every time these teams play, I would just say the Pacers never beat Giannis, right? Like since 2018, they did it once. Well, twice now before the season. And it was one game that Giannis didn't play. And then the other one was last year when the Pacers made 22 threes and like blew the roof off of Fiserv for him shooting threes. And every other time that Giannis played, the Bucks beat the Pacers, right? It was just like fait accompli, it's over. They have no answer for him, and no one has an answer for him, but he does amazing against the Pacers, including this season too. And now I can't say that anymore because this year the Pacers have found success against the Bucks, beating them 3 times and like not doing the same formula every time, which is why it's been so interesting to me. Some of it is that like Dame didn't play in the first one and Dame kind of stunk twice. But some of it's just that the Pacers have pushed some interesting buttons. So as you look at these games, right, the Bucks have an awesome record. Why have the Pacers done so well against them? What has made this a thing that, the Pacers get up and can beat the Bucks 3 times in 2 months?
Yeah, I think it's really is a variety of reasons, and I'm glad you said it too. It has felt like it hasn't been the same thing that has cost the Bucks against Indiana every time. I mean, there's been obviously like the Pacers guards tend to be really good in the games, which is a theme for Bucks opponents. I mean, they don't have any real strong perimeter defense, and that certainly hurts. But that's not unique to the Pacers. Like the Bucks have played well against the Knicks. Occasionally, they did lose a stinker to the Knicks, but they've been able to allow teams with great perimeter players to score and still bottle up the rest of the team and get a win. Like that's kind of been one of their most common avenues to winning this year. And it's not like Tyrese hasn't been 40-20 every game. He's had some amazing games against the Bucks and played really well overall. But I think that's part of it. I think earlier when they were more of an aggressive offensive rebounding team, they just couldn't contain leakouts at all. And I think that, especially that first game when Dame didn't play and Giannis scored 50, whatever, and their defense was so leaky in transition and just semi-transition. And it feels like they've kind of firmed that up. And now it's just a general perimeter defense question. And then I think the 2 Dame games just hurt so much because the Bucks have gradually, slowly improved defensively from horrible to passable, I would say, most of the time. But when you're passable, you still need your offense to be great, or at least good. And it's hard to be great or good when, Dame Lillard, who's a fantastic player, and I don't know if the Pacers have figured something out or if Dame is just kind of working through some things and getting used to his new role. He spoke about that after the game on Monday. But he's, I think, been like 3 for 15 on Monday and a pretty similar line in that in-season tournament game. Those are just going to be hard for the Bucks to win against anybody. I mean, they're going to have to be a very good offensive team with the way they're built now, with Dame and Malik Beasley starting together. So it's been really interesting to see that way. I will say, to give credit to the Pacers and not just make it seem inexplicable, I think they've done a good job hounding Giannis, even though he has scored all those points. And I think they are really good at taking advantage if guys like Dame are not playing well. I mean, they're just, I don't want to say shameless, but just like blatant about we're going to send everyone to Giannis and make someone else do something. And if they're not, then he's going to have to beat 3-4 guys every time. And I think guys like Aaron Nesmith, Isaiah Jackson, obviously Miles Turner's the main guy, but those two guys, I mean, I'd say Isaiah Jackson in particular. I know Nesmith has gotten a lot of buzz. I thought he's been great at defending Giannis across this matchup.
Yes,
Really been impressive. So I think the Pacers do a good job on Giannis when they're able to. Obviously, the whole thing with the Bucks is you get the superstar floor stretching point guard to make Giannis's life easier. When that doesn't happen, though, the Bucks then become beatable because they can't really win with defense anymore. They'll have some okay stretches, but turnovers, turnovers is the other thing. Pacers have gotten steals, and their defense, the Bucks defense, is passable when it's like, okay, we're in the half court again. We're in the half court. If they get pressed at all by turnovers, bad offensive runs, that's when things become intolerable. So I think Indiana has had a couple of things go right and then done a great job pouncing on those things, and that's how they've won those games.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 in the in-season tournament game that was like, even the Bucks score and the Pacers just throw it in and throw it up the floor. It's like, oh, he's
can't do that. Yeah.
Right. So that was a big thing. Are you ready for some stizats, Ty?
Always.
Pacers have 3 games this season with 14 or more. Excuse me. The Pacers have 5 games this season with 14 or more offensive rebounds. 3 of them are against the Milwaukee Bucks, right?
Sounds right.
So that's been a big thing. 16 when Giannis went crazy and they lost. 15 in the in-season tournament victory, and then 14 on Monday. And that's how, like, 2 of the Pacers' worst shooting games that they won were against the Bucks because they were able to win the possession game and do well in that way. And that's something that's really helped them is the Bucks aren't particularly killer on the offensive glass. They're a fine rebounding team, but just not killer on the offensive glass. And then the turnovers have compounded on that and given the Pacers extra chances, just looking at the field goal attempt numbers. Stat number 2. The Pacers have attempted 32 or more free throws 4 times in a game this season. 2 of them are against the Milwaukee Bucks. And this speaks to something you already said. The guards have awesome games because the Bucks perimeter defense isn't particularly good. And Halliburton's like a fine driver. He's pretty good, but that's not like his game. But McConnell and Mathurin in particular, just relentless rim pressure because Malik Beasley can't guard anybody in this matchup. Like in the clutch on Monday, they just kept going at him. If he was on Halliburton would run the pick and roll. If he was on McConnell, it was McConnell. And Mathurin's been great in 3 or 4 of these games. So that's been significant as they've been able to. Yeah, Giannis is taking $1 million. He earns them, to be clear. I'm not one of those people who disagrees with that. But the Pacers can match it to the best of their abilities by themselves getting to the rim, which is not unusual, but like higher than they do in other games. So those 2 things really stand out to me as stuff they do better against the Bucks and other teams as a stylistic advantage that even though the Bucks can have the sufficient offense because either the one game that Dame played well or Giannis is scoring roughly 6,000 points in one game, they can keep up because they also can have an efficient offense. And that makes them either close or just have a chance. And they've been able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, the offensive rebounding thing I've been really looking closely at recently. The ones the Bucks give up, to be clear, and you can tell the root cause again is the perimeter defense. Like the perimeter guys don't stay even close enough when Brook is in drop, and then Brook has to go try and corral the ball handler, and then it's just so tough to have someone. Because usually it's like Dame or your best shot is Giannis, but often it's more like Chris Middleton or Dame is trying to come and then box out Miles Turner or Isaiah Jackson on the offensive rebound. And they're so far away to begin with and obviously just much smaller. So that's, again, like, it's pretty easy it's obvious, but I think around trade deadline, the Bucks are going to be looking at any perimeter defender they can find and maybe even buyout market if one becomes available just because it's not really tenable. I know Marjon Beauchamp missed the game on Monday. Andre Jackson Jr. just got a little bit of burn. Those are guys that people are excited about as perimeter defenders, but also we've seen them get beat a ton as well, frankly, themselves. And maybe they'd be better than Malik Beasley a bit, better than Dame, who, is mostly good. He had the one, of course, low light against Tyrese, but I think that happens to most guys throughout the league. Looking for the screen, it's not there, and he's gone. It happened to Beasley in an earlier game against Tyrese as well. But overall, those guys are just not good enough, and the rookies are not Beauchamp's in the second year. But sometimes either they're not as effective defensively either, or you're just trading so much offense for defense. It's just been a tough situation with this team trying to guard smalls, basically. Forwards, when Crowder's healthy, I mean, Middleton's been a little better than he was last year. Of course, you have Giannis as well. But the small guys have given Milwaukee a lot of trouble, and then it's led to Lopez getting pulled away from the paint, even when he's in drop, and then guys like Isaiah Jackson, Miles Turner can feast, even Obi Toppin, of course, who can get up and put one back too.
Yeah, and the adjustment Griffin went to Monday was like, okay, Brooks going to guard Matherin because the Pacers aren't shooting well, and then they just threw floaters over him for 4 possessions, and they won the game. Right? Like that's a good adjustment to make. It's just that's still hard to do.
It is. And there are a lot of Griffin detractors, and he's certainly not perfect, but it is funny when I see like they're not trying anything new out there when teams kill him, and it's like they play like 3 different defensive coverages. They put Brook on a wing to try and change that up. Like nothing works. Like I would love to see the adjustment that people have in mind to stop Indiana from scoring on the Bucks with this roster of players who's available. I mean, if you want to play Andre Jackson Jr. 30 minutes, he'll probably get to like 14 before he fouls out. If you want to do that, that's fine, but I don't think that's going to suddenly stop Tyrese Halliburton and company from scoring. Most people haven't found a way to really do that consistently, but certainly with a roster like this, it's just been difficult for Milwaukee, to say the least.
One more break here, guys, so I can talk to you about the lovely people over at Gametime, my favorite way to buy tickets to events that I go to. How do I know it's so great? I used it in New York to go watch the New York Liberty. It's fast. It's easy. You can use it for sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever's by you. They've got it. And they have killer last-minute deals, all in prices, views from receipt, and the best price guarantee. And I used all of those features to use Gametime when buying tickets myself. I could see exactly what the view is going to be in the Barclays Center on there. I knew I was getting the best price because they have the Gametime guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section or for less, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. So I felt great about the price I was getting. I knew exactly what I was going to pay, so there were no hidden fees, and they were right on it. And I got the tickets the day of the game. Last minute deals, everything on Gametime is the absolute best way to buy tickets to events. I highly recommend it. You've got to check it out. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off at Gametime. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Yeah, the flow chart of have you been able to stop the Pacers consistently is, are you the Orlando Magic? If the answer is no, you have not been able to stop the Pacers consistently. Yeah, I think as an aside to like Pacers Bucks, a lot of times when people feel like the coach didn't adjust or like blah, blah, it's very like reaction to what happened.
It's just, did they win or lose? That's literally
did they win,
if they win, it's like, I think he's doing a good job. If they lose, like he's not trying anything.
It just either didn't work or like it's all they could do.
The storyline after Monday, the other one was they have Dame playing like Klay Thompson out there, which I was really just like, he brings up the ball most of the time when he's on the court. He's up there like 1 touch less than Giannis per game for the season. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what some people are watching, but I don't think he's playing like Klay Thompson.
64 on these guys. Maybe he should have the ball more than Dame.
Maybe when Dame is 3 for 12 in the fourth quarter, you try to do something else. I don't know. Is that a good plan? Maybe not.
But they lost, so it was all stupid, obviously.
Yeah, it's dumb. Trade everyone, fire the coach, and just try and rebuild and see what kind of assets you can get.
This is obviously an easy theme to point at because it just won the Pacers a game. But the game the Bucks won, right, 140-126. Bobby Portis was great. He had 19. It was a plus 16. Campaign had a nice passing game. Beauchamp was 3 for 4. Andre Jackson gave them nice minutes and fouled a bunch, like you said.
Yeah.
Their bench was good in that game. And in the in-season tournament game, the Pacers bench was just a wee bit better. And Monday night, the Pacers bench was like eons better. And the Pacers do have a lot of depth. That's been a strength for them all season. But you keep talking about them adding a player, like in general, on a trade or buyout market. And they had no Crowder and Beauchamp on Monday. I get it. But like, they just need a guy a lot of times because they have some lineups where it's just like woefully ineffective. And the Pacers have none of those, or very rarely have those. And the bench has been huge for the Pacers in these games because starters versus starters in all 4 so far, the Bucks have been better, right? It's just once the mixing and matching starts that the Pacers get an advantage. So I think that speaks to everything you just said. Is like they just had either their fully healthy team or one more guy. Even that would go a long way because the bench minutes have been all Pacers.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I know the stat was something crazy like 70 to 15, which is it is a
McConnell's
little
stat line
tilted.
was like exactly the same as the Bucks whole
The Bucks
bench.
bench.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, again, when TJ McConnell outscores Damian Lillard, it's probably going to be a rough night for the Bucks. But I know like Nemhard got hurt, and I think
Yeah.
it was a Jalen Smith only ended up playing like 11 minutes. So two starters combined for 19 minutes for Indiana. So the number is probably a little bigger, but there is no debating. Indiana's bench has been much, much better. And I think the interesting thing to me is I look at most of what they do with their bench minutes, and I think it makes sense. Like they're never without one of Chris Damianis. It's not like they're doing 5-man bench groups where they're just
Right.
saying campaign and Pat Connaughton figure it out. There's been some rough moments for sure with Chris leading the way with turnovers. Although one thing I've noticed is usually he has the ugliest turnovers that stand out, but those are often his only ones, and he still ends up having a pretty efficient night. He has a good scoring the ball. Had some bad passes on Monday, but it's just really comes down to like guys not hitting shots often enough. I mean, they're opening up looks for Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, Payne to a certain extent. Payne is like everyone said he was streaky, and all Bucks fans repeated it to each other, and then like it's still hard to cope with just how streaky he is. He has got to be one of the streakier players in the National Basketball Association. The highs are super high, the lows are tough, and we've seen his minutes fluctuate to he plays with Dame to he only plays when Dame's not out there to we've seen some where he just doesn't play at all in second halves. But yeah, it's a little surprising. You would think players like Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton would give the Bucks a little more stability. Bobby had been better, has had some real rough games in the last couple weeks or month or so. Connaughton has just not shot well in the regular season for since the beginning of last season. He had a good postseason against the Heat, all glorious, horrible 5 games it was, and he was good in that series too. And he still like he had some steals. He does some things nice. He knows where to be. But the shooting is just killing. They just need more points. I mean, they're a team again. Going back to that theme of their defense can't hold up. That's not just the starters. That's the whole roster. They need to score. I think they have the personnel to score at least somewhat. Like the other thing is when you're built like the Bucks with Dame Christianis, the starter minutes are probably going to be great. If your bench is dead even, that's fine. You just need to score some, and they can't do that when things just dry out. Portis is off and on 3-point shooting this year, but overall since like the championship year has not been a very good 3-point shooter. Again with Connaughton, Malik Beasley coming off the bench would help a lot, but frankly, no one's earned that starting role. If Crowder comes back and plays as good as he has, we can have that conversation then. He had been scoring the ball at an unsustainable rate, but just playing good, solid ball all around and giving them a lot on the perimeter defensively too. So yeah, I mean, I think you look at I think especially Connaughton with Portis being the third big and with Robin Lopez as your fourth big, that's a really crucial role. I think he's less likely to be moved. But if Connaughton is unable to just, start hitting some shots more consistently, I do think that Portland second this year, maybe the guys like Beauchamp or Andre Jackson Jr., you could look at trying to find some sort of a more consistent two-way wing or even guard player to fill that role just because, semi-shooting, not great defensive players just don't have much of a fit on this team anymore. And you can really tell, this was a roster that was built with Drew Holiday to be a point guard. And then, of course, you don't pass on getting Dame, but all the other moves were made before that one except for Payne, right? I think that really shows in a roster that tried to just load up on offense to overcome Drew's inability in the playoffs, and now they have the opposite problem.
Sounds like the Bucks could use one Jordan Nwora back, huh? Ooh, some regret I hear in your
What?
He was great for the Pacers last year, truly.
He was.
I can't wait he's not playing this year, but he was great for the Pacers last year.
Yeah. Well, they're trying a lot of guys at the 4, so maybe he'll get another crack.
Funnily enough, the reason I missed the game ball fracas like right when it happened is because the game ended and I watched Jordan Nwora beeline to the Bucks bench and just dap up everybody. And I was like, wow, he's still tight with all those guys. And then I flipped over to like start writing, and then they come back on and they're like, that was just a big thing in the hallway. I'm like, what? I was watching Jordan Nwora. I was
checking out Jordan Nwora. Yeah, he came in late in that game and I think was like laughing with some of the guys on the court too. And it's like, oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah. Good for him. I talked to him before their game on Monday. He's still very tight with a lot of those guys. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the shooting thing because I was checking out the pace. Like they won with going 5 for 35 from deep on Monday. And I was like, man, they have not shot well in any of these games against the Bucks except for that first one where they were on fire. But then I was like, oh man, the Bucks have been worse. Like all of them, right? They're both top 10 in 3-point percentage, and they've both been awful from 3. Like every time they play each other for some reason, it is the weirdest thing.
It's jarring to see a team like the Pacers score, like run up paint points on the Bucks. Just the whole Bucks
They took
identity
48
for the
free
last 5
throws. What the
years.
heck was that?
Yeah,
They never do
that
that.
too. That too. Which again, it's funny too because it's like, they're dropping with Brook again. Like it's not like they're trying to do. I mean, they switch it up when it doesn't work, which the Bucks of Budenholzer also did. But it's not like they're trying to give up these paint points. They're not. I mean, their whole thing is run guys off three and don't give up paint points. They're just unable to with the way teams have pressured them defensively, which I know we just keep coming back to, but it is such a through line for so many things that go wrong for the Bucks, at least on that end.
Last thing, because to me this is the swing thing. I think if Dame gets going, the Pacers are just toast, right? Because
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, they scored 140 without him going. I mean, he was 6 for 14 when they scored 140, right? Like that's all
Yeah.
it takes. What do you think they can do? I mean, is it just make the shots? Like Nemhard's a good defender. Who knows if he'll be healthy? Bruce Brown might be out again. Who knows? McConnell can be a pest, and he was one day, but like they're good enough defenders, and Dame's not tall, so they can actually like put capable guys on him. But like it's freaking Damian Lillard we're talking about. Like it should. These names I said shouldn't matter
Right.
that much. So is it just making them like that? To me, if he is a normal game, the Pacers are just toast. Like, is that it to you?
It's not it. I mean, I don't want to simplify it that much, and
I do.
that's. I mean, it's fair. I mean, listen, I think it's hard for any team, but especially for a team like the Pacers, which again, this is most teams, but they don't have many good one-on-one options for Giannis, which it sounds no one does, right? But like, really, not at all. I mean, when they were trying to let Miles Turner just guard him, it was just not going well. And Isaiah Jackson had some moments, but of course, you can't let those guys. You can't let Giannis isolate on those guys.
Right.
And if Dame is also hitting the shots, then it's like, okay, how do we send help to both? And that's the whole point of this Bucks season, is if both guys are going and they're playing well together, there is no way to guard them both. That's the whole thing. And especially with Indiana with the lack of size down low. Certainly you would think, if Dame is 10 for 15 or something, it's going to be a difficult night as long as Giannis isn't missing stuff at the rim. And maybe even if he is, I mean, we've seen Dame carry the Bucks a couple times this year already, even though overall, I think probably below his standard. He can still be so good when he's on. Like there's a Raptors game where he was just an absolute flamethrower that Giannis missed, and that's why they won. And I think fourth quarter against Brooklyn as well, he just took that game over. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust if Dame is playing well in this game on Wednesday, just because, you can't just keep letting him shoot. He's a guy who scored 70 points before, but you also can't get too cute with how you guard Giannis either. So I think some of the things they've done really well, like in the in-season tournament game, is they purposefully leave Brook Lopez open and just dare him to shoot. I would imagine that's
you just
what
cut
we'll
off
see
my
again.
point. That's good. That's
Sorry.
good. You're all over.
That's it. Because who's the fifth guy? I don't mean to call out Brook, but that's the fifth guy with the starters.
Right.
Beasley's such a good shooter. We'll see if Middleton plays. Maybe there'll be a young guy starting for him. That would then be the guy they'd leave open. But okay, Brook Lopez on the wing. We love you, big guy. You're a good shooter. If you hit 6 of 10, oh well. Like that's better than Dame and Giannis cooking us. And I think the Bucks, for their end, need to be a lot more force the issue on some of these. I think sometimes they go, that's the good shot, that's the good shot, that's the good shot. I think Brook took like 10 threes in the in-season tournament game. Like that's not good. That's too many, and he wasn't hot at any point. So I think the Bucks need to, if that is the Pacers' response, so basically we'll play 4-on-5 defensively. The Bucks need to go too bad. Like we'll take Brook off the floor. We're not just going to let you do this because obviously, open catch and shoot's generally bad, but Giannis dunking and Dame pulling up is even worse. So I think that's the interesting chess match, and I'm hoping to see Dame play well, and get that game, and then to see how things go from there, and the pieces keep moving. I feel like these two coaches have been pretty adaptive. We've seen a lot of different things in these games, and I think that adds some flavor to it as well.
So Caitlin Cooper posted a picture of this, which was going to be my final point of how the Pacers changed defending Giannis from late last month to this most recent game. And you can see in the one they just played Monday, Giannis is coming up the floor. He just crossed half court, and there's a wall right above the free throw line to cut him off, which is smart. That's how you should defend Giannis for the Pacers. And it's Miles Turner, Jalen Smith, and Andrew Nembhard. And so Giannis can't score there. But then on the left wing, one pass away being helped off is Dame. And on the right wing, one pass away being helped off is Brook Lopez. So it's like, if they're just making shots, you can't defend Giannis that way. And Dame hasn't made shots. And Brook Lopez, I looked it up while you were talking, is 5 for 22 from 3 in these 4 games. So like, if either one of them is just punishing that coverage, it's like, you shrug. It's like,
That's
oh, okay.
it's been the Bucks' identity since 18-19, but
Right.
back then it was it's still Brooke, but Eric Bledsoe and guys like that who you obviously couldn't rely on. And now that Dame is the other guy on the other corner there, and Chris is on the court somewhere, it becomes even harder for defenses. But I think Indiana's just was really good at points of just being like, we just got to make sure it's Brooke, right? If leave Brooke wide open, like more than you'd leave other people open, because we can't afford these other guys getting going. And that's been an interesting thing to watch too. So you'd hope Milwaukee can, move where he's on the floor or something. Of course, if he's too close to the rim, then it again becomes a little too easy to help off, which is why, sometimes teams are able to force Brooke off the floor, but that's where Bobby also not hitting threes and Crowder being out makes it difficult, because there is no perfect answer at the 4 unless you go really small with Middleton, and then we run into more rebounding issues. And the Bucks, it sounds silly to be this verklempt about not having Jay Crowder, but Jay Crowder coming back would be very beneficial. I think it's supposed to be just a couple of weeks here. If he's able to look anything like he did early in the season, that should help unlock a lot of this stickiness for Milwaukee.
I agree. I'm looking forward to this one. Rivalry or not, adjustments or not, there's clear ways that both teams can play a lot better and a lot worse in some cases. So I am looking forward to it. Ty, you're the best. This was awesome. I hope we get to see more Pacers Bucks this season if it comes to that. Where can people find you and your work covering the Bucks with what I must say is the best name for a team-specific podcast in the United States?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I didn't come up with the name, not that clever, but you can find all our podcasts and everything that we do covering the Bucks and other Wisconsin sports teams at gspn.info. I am on Twitter/X and Threads at Ti Windisch, TIWINDISCH, and appreciate anyone who checks out our stuff as always, even if it's to laugh. If the Bucks get gashed again, I will still take your listenership, dear Pacers fans.
That's fine. They'll be flocking if they go 4-1 against after the I think the Bucks won 11 in a row at one point against the Pacers. If they go 4-1 against the Bucks this season, they will take it.
It's earned. I'm not mad at it at all. I would do the same thing. The Bucks were in this position before, and it felt great. They made shirts that said 24-1 because they stopped the Warriors' winning streak in a season they accomplished very little else. Like, you got to take what you can get. Obviously, the Pacers have a lot of good things coming. But
I don't know if you know this. I talk about that game a lot, right?
Really?
Yes, because every time the Pacers lose the last game of a road trip and they just get waxed, I'm like, guys, NBA teams suck on the last game of road trips. And my example is the Warriors on the 7th game of a road trip, who had literally not lost a game all season, losing to the Bucks that year.
Yeah. And the shirts were made and it was a whole thing. But I don't get mad. It's like, a lot of things suck. Sports, broader than that. Enjoy the fun stuff. Why not? It's like people were getting really upset about Game Ball Gate, and I was like, I get why everyone was mad. Maybe you could say the Bucks were in the wrong more. Obviously, that everyone's heated. It's post game.
No one knows. It's saying who's wrong is dumb because no one knows. No one knows.
Right. And
maybe 3 people know, but
everyone was petty. I think at a certain point, there was a miscommunication, and then it became clear that the other sides wanted different things, and both reactions was immediately, you're not getting the thing. We don't care. You're not getting it for sure. It's like, yeah, they hate each other. It's a rivalry. Look at they had a kerfuffle in the tunnel. If that's not a rivalry, that's to me, if there's a kerfuffle in the tunnel, that's a rivalry.
It's how you get the game ball for this podcast. You were better than me, and I will not.
I don't agree. Like Giannis, I'm giving it to you for your 3-pointers record.
We're going to fight because I'm giving it back to you. That's what's actually going to cause this kerfuffle.
I'm signing James Johnson.
That's right. Okay. All right. You got me. I have to talk about this. Sorry. James Johnson is on the Pacers. But the Bucks thing happened right before it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of Bucks people were like,
I did this.
This is in reaction to what happened. And maybe it was. Maybe they officially did it that day because of that. They were talking to him before, but maybe they officially did it that day because of it. What is the real tangible difference between tough guy James Johnson and tough guy Thanasis? Can you explain the difference to me?
Thanasis was already there. That's it. It's the timing. It's the timing that's funny. But it's the timing that's funny. It's the timing that is incredibly funny. Right after we got all these things, Giannis is going in there.
In their roles on the bench.
Do you know what? You know what the funniest thing was? is that I was mad at Thanasis for making Jay Crowder hold him back. And I was mad at Crowder for holding him back. I was like, Jay Crowder has had to get abdominal surgery. He does not need to be aggravating this injury. If TA gets suspended for a game, that's not impacting the Bucks all that much. And I love TA. Love TA. Contributes a lot off the court. If he's suspended for a game, that is better than Jay Crowder aggravating that injury. I was like, let him go if he wants to go. It won't be that bad, hopefully, maybe. But no, it's not a big difference. But the timing is hysterical. If the Bucks didn't have TA and then they signed him the day after the game, would have also been very, very funny.
It would have been very funny. To be clear, I'm very pro TA and that.
It's a big role. And now we've gotten to a point where there's a section of Bucks fans who are like, the Heat have done all this winning and they had Udonis Haslem, so you should have a guy like this. I'm like, you know what? Fine. I don't. It doesn't move me either way, but sure.
If we're getting to the point where we're debating the 15th roster spot, it's time to wrap it up. I'm on Twitter, or whatever the heck you call it, at Tony R. Easton. This show is at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking about whatever happens in this basketball game. Fracases or no fracases. We'll cover it all here. And I'm sure Ty and the crew over at the Gyro Step will do the same thing. Thank y'all for listening. Have a fantastic day. We will see you tomorrow.